tomorrow night, Arsenal return to the Emirates Stadium for the biggest game there in over 16 years. That's right, Arsenal tomorrow night will take on PSG in the Champions League semi-final. The first step, hopefully, towards the Champions League final. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. It is Monday morning, 7:13 a.m, so I just want to say a big welcome to anyone who's listening on their way to work this Monday morning. I hope you're going to have a great week and I hope your weekend was lovely as well. Let's get into this then, because it's all very exciting, and usually, I do a little spiel here, but I'm just excited about the game tomorrow night. Actually, there is something I do want to talk about before we get onto the men's game, is the women's game. French opposition, Champions League semi-final, the women have done it. Arsenal women are through to the Champions League final. They beat Lyon yesterday 4-1 away from home. I've watched the highlights. I didn't get to watch the game. Watched the highlights, and I think it looked like Arsenal women played absolutely fantastically. I mean, Mariona Caldente scored a wonderful goal. She deserves all the credit in the world, and every time I watch Alessia Russo play, I think she is an incredible player. They won 4-1 in the end, overturning a 2-1 deficit from the first leg. So they lost at the Emirates, and I must admit I saw that and I thought, this might be quite a task then, because Lyon, for context, had won 11 out of 11 of their last Champions League semi-finals. So that's an incredible record. It's mind-blowing record. I will admit, watching the highlights, it did look a little bit like Lyon just had one of those days. Everything seemed to go wrong for them. A lot of defensive mistakes, but Arsenal still have to capitalise, and the women did a really, really good job. Like I say, French opposition, potentially, well, no, I think it is Barcelona in the final. They beat Chelsea women. I think it was like 8-2 in the end, a rough one for Chelsea in that semi-final. French opposition, it's feeling they beat Real Madrid in the quarterfinals. The men beat Real Madrid in the quarterfinals. Is there a bit of symmetry here? Are we seeing a sort of foreshadowing of what's to come? I bloody hope so, because I certainly would take a 5-3 aggregate victory over PSG, just like the women did against Lyon. Still have that ambition to bring a women's podcast over the summer and into next year. Maybe once a month we'll do a women's roundup, something like that. But on to the men, because they play tomorrow night, and it's all very, very exciting. If you heard my preview podcast over the weekend, I spoke a lot about the threat of Nuno Mendes and Hakimi. Today is going to be a more general preview. We're going to do lineup predictions, of course, what I think Arteta would do, what I would do, how can we hurt them, speak a little bit about their threat and their style, and of course do a score prediction, which will make me very nervous, but all very, very exciting. Let's get started then. And first I want to talk about PSG's style. I think we all have a picture in our head. You might have watched the Villa game or the Liverpool game against PSG. And of course we have our 2-0 victory against them in the group stage. Big warning for anyone who watched that. They're not the same team. Listening to Arsenal Vision with Julien Laurent over the weekend, he spoke about how PSG were trying a lot of things out under Luis Enrique at that start of the year. When we played them, they had a number of different things going on. They were doing a lot of rotation. They were changing style every so often, not necessarily formation, but trying different things. And Dembele was out. And of course, they didn't have Kvaratskhelia at that time. He came in for £70 million in January. So I think you should almost put that 2-0 victory aside and not think about it. This is not the same PSG we are about to play. You're much more likely to get something out of watching the Villa game. I thought over the 2 legs, that was a really good example of what PSG are about. I'm going to talk about some of that today. And obviously the Liverpool game was a weird one, because I think that was 2 teams at the very peak of their powers, just going at it. And Donnarumma had a great game in the first leg, and I thought Alisson had a great game in the second leg. It was one of those where style almost went out the window, tactics almost went out of the window, and it was just superb players at the top of their game, just going at it. I think similar to some of the games we've seen for Arsenal over recent years when we've come up against teams like Liverpool, Manchester City, and we've had those, potentially not this year when we had the 5-1 against City, but you could say the 2-2 against Liverpool, really high quality football, and tactics and stuff obviously play a part, but the individual quality and the individual battles end up being the thing that wins it. The Villa game's a really good example of how PSG play. And I've looked at their style in the Champions League this morning, and I think there are some really interesting stats. Now, I've done it in Champions League because the French League just hasn't felt like a contest for PSG this year. I haven't watched any of it, but I think they won the league at sort of 22 points clear. And, we speak about Liverpool walking to a league title. PSG absolutely have walked to a league title. They probably crawled there. They just lost, though, 3-1 this weekend, Friday night, I believe it was, against Nice, their first league defeat of the year. So an incredible record, but they will not be going unbeaten. I don't think that result has any consequence to our team and our match against them, but they didn't really rotate. They played a very, very strong team. Yes, they made some subs at around 60 minutes to get some of those key players off, but it looked like the guys for PSG could not get the job done. They had tons and tons of chances, really high XG, and were not able to get past the Nice. Is it Nice or Nantes? It might be Nantes. Goalkeeper. So I think the fact that they've played more recently than us probably gives us a bit of an advantage. And obviously we are at home. Arsenal are preparing those two big tifos. I'm sure the atmosphere is going to be just as electric as it was for the Real Madrid tie, if not more. I mean, Mikel Arteta hasn't had the opportunity as much in press conferences as he would like. I'm sure we'll hear from him later today, and I'm sure he will provide a rallying call once more. But he has mentioned, bring your boots and your shin pads and get ready. We want you to play every ball with us. Of course, I think he will get a response from the fans on that. I think it's going to be an incredible atmosphere tomorrow night, but it will also be an incredible atmosphere in the second leg in the Parc des Princes. I've been to the Parc des Princes for a PSG versus Monaco game. An incredible stadium, an incredible atmosphere. They really, really love that football team, and that city is obsessed with PSG, especially now that Luis Enrique has come in. Let's talk about their style, because I realise I've just gone 7 minutes kind of not giving you any really super valuable information. So let's talk PSG, and they are direct as it comes, let's say. We know they're rapid up top, but they are going to look to move the ball very, very, very quickly, in my opinion. They are third in the Champions League for progressive passes. That's 55.2 progressive passes per 90. For context, Arsenal are at 39.3. So they are going to be far more direct. They're going to be playing balls forward very, very quickly. And they have 5 players in the Champions League top 10 for progressive passes per 90. Incredible. Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Vitinha, Marquinhos, and João Neves. So all players who will start a move, start phase 1, the build-up phase in the kind of deep third for PSG, and they are going to look to move that ball forward and fire it into the forward players. Of course, the progressive passing stat kind of ignores the PSG third, but just in front of the PSG third, I think is where they'll look to move the ball from. They're going to look to fire it forward, and a real contrast to how Arsenal play. Again, progressive carries, second in the Champions League for progressive carries, 30.7 per 90. Arsenal are at 18.4. Dembele, Hakimi, Barcola in the top 10. So this is a real style clash, in my opinion. We have Arsenal, who are a big team. We speak about them being fantastic off the ball. Players like Declan Rice, Mikel Merino, Kai Havertz when he's fit, the Gabriel Saliba partnership. Players who are big guys who pick up fantastic positions and do a superb job with their rest defence, and essentially try to suffocate you in many different ways. They either try and suffocate you high up the pitch, or they drop into this low block and, say, come get round us. You can't get round us because we are so well positioned. And then when they have the ball, Arsenal are, they are death by 1,000 cuts. They are a control machine. Sometimes we wish they did a little bit less of that. And I think next year, one of the lessons from Mikel Arteta will be take that rein off a little bit, but we will build up in the wide areas, build up in our side pods on the left and on the right, and then look to drift inside, maybe via a cross or via one of those wingers coming inside to attack the central areas. That's how Arsenal do things. looking at those stats for PSG around the progressive passes, the progressive carries, and knowing what I know about them, they're going to be much more, rather than a death by 1,000 cuts, they're going to be much more of a bazooka through the middle, right? They are going to try and win the ball. When they win possession, they are going to try and go. They're going to try and release players like Doué, try and release players like Kvaratskhelia, and really, really go for Arsenal in transition and try and maybe move up the pitch in kind of 2, 3, 4 passes and get around that Arsenal, the brilliant Arsenal rest defence and the brilliant Arsenal block by just going, we are going to go through it so fast that you can't get set. And what I feel like this could be is it could be a repeat or a similar style of game to kind of those City-Liverpool games we saw a few years ago. Pep Guardiola's control and measured system where everything is mapped out and it's like a chess game versus Jurgen Klopp's rock and roll football, as it was called at the time, where the ball is moved through that midfield at real pace to an electric front three of Salah, Firmino and Mane. It really does feel like there's tons of parallels there, Arsenal will be trying to be exceptional defensively, be really clever with where they stand and how they manage transitions early. And they will have to make sure that they manage them early, because if they don't, PSG will fly through them. And they will fly through them really well. Of course, the other thing that Arsenal could do, and they might well do, is just not commit quite so hard to make it more difficult for PSG to transition. But ultimately, we need to go and win the game. There will be a risk that needs to be taken at some point. We will have to take a risk on managing a transition high up the pitch, unless we can sneak a couple of goals through set pieces, which I will come on to. Let's do lineups, because I think Arteta's going to do one thing, I would do it differently, so I think that's interesting to explore. I think the back four kind of picks itself, right? Back five, sorry. David Raya in goal, Timber, Saliba, Kivior, Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think that is, we have to go that way. It's a back four that did so well against Real Madrid, and those players have been playing really well. I mean, Jurrien Timber and Saliba are no-brainers in the back four at the moment. I think the Kivior position, he's done really well since Gabriel's been injured. And Miles Lewis-Skelly, I don't think Calafiori is going to be fit. I really don't. So that's kind of sewn up, and I think that back five have earned their spot in a Champions League semi-final. Where it gets interesting, where I think Arteta will differ from how I would do things is going forward in that front six. So Declan Rice has to play at 6. Thomas Partey's suspended. There's nothing we can do about that. It's such an unfortunate yellow card. So frustrating. We could really do with Thomas Partey controlling that midfield and progressing the ball and doing what he does. But c'est la vie, it's gone. We can't do anything about it now. So it will be Declan Rice in the 6. I think Mikel Arteta will go with what he's gone with in the league most recently, and that is Martin Odegaard, Mikel Merino as the 2 8s, Saka wide right, Martinelli wide left, and Trossard up top. And you know what? Fine by me. If that is the lineup, I actually really like that lineup, and I like the system that we've played with that, where Trossard has this free roll, goes off and drifts, and Mikel Merino fills that. He fills the number 9 spot from midfield. He kind of drives forward, arrives late. He's got really good intelligence for that. And then, of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly fills in behind him in the midfield. So I'm fine with that. I really do like that as a system. For me, there is a clear reason why I would rather go for a slightly different setup. And my setup would be take Leandro Trossard out, put Mikel Merino up top, and put Alexander Zinchenko in the left 8. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a bit weird. We need goals. We need goals to win this final, and Leandro Trossard is in fantastic form. I agree with you. We're going to need Leandro Trossard across this tie. I promise you that. He will have a really key role. But for me, one thing that PSG will probably try and do, they will try and set some traps all across the pitch. And, it might be for Miles Lewis-Skelly trying to take on his inexperience. It might even be for Declan Rice. With him having to play in the 6 rather than the 8, they might be trying to look at and catch him out. And know that he's not Thomas Partey. He can't play on the half turn quite so nicely. So, they might leave Kivior and Saliba alone and say, look, you have the ball. The moment it goes into one of these two in the kind of dual pivot that we set up, we're going for you. And again, they'll try and get us in transition. PSG are not going to be a team that sit back into a low block against us from a defensive point of view. They will look to counter on us when we have when they win the ball back in their half, and they will look to press us when we are trying to control the ball. They are an aggressive team in both senses. So I think they might set traps. I think they might also look to kind of look a little bit and exploit David Raya after his performance against Crystal Palace. It was a bit nervy, wasn't it? So maybe they're looking at that and thinking, we can get at these guys. So this is how we can maybe nick an early goal and start to settle ourselves into the tie. That is the reason why I would go for Mikel Merino up front, because I think we need an outball. I think this is a game where a lot of our players this will be the biggest game of their life. Take probably Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice out of it, because they've obviously played big games for England. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, Mikel Merino's obviously played many big games for Spain. Martinelli, this has got to be his biggest game. Rice, I would think it's... Oh, no, sorry, I just said not Rice. Ødegaard, I would think it would be his biggest game. Saliba, definitely. Kivior, Miles Lewis-Skelly for a certainty. David Raya. I think these players are probably playing the biggest game of their professional career. So I think they need, as much as I want us to stick to our guns and play our way, I think we do need an easy option. And a big long ball over the top to Mikel Merino for him to win would be fantastic. And I'll tell you one thing as well. That PSG midfield is not going to win the running battle against us. Okay? Even with Zinchenko in there, Ødegaard, Rice, Zinchenko are going to run a lot harder and be a lot fitter, in my opinion, than Vitinha, João Neves and Fabian Ruiz. I just think we are going to win that running battle. So if we can get Mikel Merino up top, winning first balls, we're going to get onto those second balls. I really do believe that. I think we will be able to create threat that way. And just to think about having that out ball, I think it's the right way to go. Obviously, I'd rather it was Mikel Merino up front, Partey, Ødegaard, Rice, because then we'd have tons of running power. I know for a fact we'd win that second ball battle, but I think that's how you have to go. Give, Miles Lewis-Skelly, David Raya, Jakub Kivior, make sure they've got an option at all times, and that can't just be Declan Rice running like a madman for 90 minutes. It can't just be William Saliba saying, give me the ball wherever, I will get out of this situation. I think a long ball to Mikel Merino, not only that, it will make them think twice about the press. It will make them think twice about it. So I think that's a really important tactical thing that we need to bring in. And I worry if we go with Trossard from the start, we won't do that. Of course, I'd love to see that change though. Let's get into the game. Let's get everyone settled. Have Mikel Merino up top. Maybe get ahead, And then actually you could bring Leandro Trossard in. Put him up top. And put Mikel Merino in midfield and know that actually Mikel Merino can do both jobs in there a little bit more effectively maybe than Zinchenko can do. Zinchenko can pass the ball fantastically and he's really, really technical, but does he get into the box and score goals? Probably not. And is he going to be putting in the crunching tackles and winning big duels like Mikel Merino does? Probably not. So, 60 minutes, we're 1-0 up maybe. Make that change. Bring Mikel Merino into the midfield and go, you're not getting through here. And by the way, if you give us any gaps, this guy's going to get you because you're tired. I think that's how you've got to play it. That is what I would do. Like I say, I'm not going to be mad at either because I like both systems. And I think, it probably would be a risk bringing Zinchenko in at left 8 where he's not had that much football and he isn't quite as physical as Mikel Merino. So, there's those two arguments. Do you put Mikel Merino in there to win duels and make sure that he's switched on in transition and stuff? Or do you give him a spot up front as an outball? Either way, I think we will see Mikel Merino getting very, very high up that pitch and trying to win headers and win that kind of first chance, win that first ball for the midfield and the wingers to get in and around and get the second ball. Okay, I'm going to take a short break now, and when I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the game, how we can hurt them, and just some more thoughts, basically. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to Arsenal Unfiltered. This is the Arsenal versus PSG preview podcast. of course, of that all-important first leg of our Champions League semi-final. What I want to talk to you now about is set pieces, because I think this is really, really interesting. Arsenal obviously known as an elite set piece team. We've scored so many goals in the Premier League around, from corner kicks, from free kicks. We had one at the weekend, of course. Jakub Kiwior rising highest against Crystal Palace. And when I was thinking about this game, I thought, I don't think PSG are huge. They've got Donnarumma, but as I understand it, he's not like the smoothest player when it comes to coming and claiming crosses. He's a huge bloke with shovels for hands. I mean, he's absolutely massive. He should be awesome at coming and claiming crosses, but I don't know if his timing's quite right. I don't know if he quite gets it perfect. And I've heard from a couple of sources that actually that's a little bit of a weakness of his. So I thought, okay, this is really interesting. We're really strong at it. PSG people are kind of reporting, actually, this is a way that Arsenal could get at PSG. But then I go to do the stats and I think, let's have a look at this. So I thought about, like, how would I look at this? So I went on the Champions League. Again, I don't really want to assess PSG in Ligue 1. And I looked at shot creating actions against PSG per 90 from a dead ball pass. Now, that does include throw-ins, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it also has free kicks, corners, all the like. PSG 1.33 shot creating actions against them from dead ball scenarios, and I thought, well, that sounds quite low. And then I looked at Arsenal, 1.67. So against Arsenal, people create more chances against Arsenal from dead ball situations than they do against PSG. I thought, oh, that's really not what I was expecting. So I've been kind of sat here wondering, is this really something we can exploit them with? Because I think we're gonna have a height advantage. You know, Pacho's pretty big, but Marquinhos is not the hugest bloke. Their midfield is pretty lightweight in comparison to ours. I mean, especially if Mikel Merino starts the game in midfield, those guys are going to be a mismatch. Then you throw William Saliba, Jakub Kiwior up there. Even if you put Jurrien Timber up there as well, I think we've got a massive height advantage. And obviously with the corner delivery of Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka, it feels like an area that we should be able to cause them some issues, but it's not playing out in the stats. So I'm just wondering, have PSG just not played the teams that really go for it in terms of set pieces? I mean, of course they've played Liverpool recently. They're not a set piece heavy team. They've played Aston Villa. They are really not a set piece heavy team. They're quite a way down in the league table for kind of chances created from set pieces. So I still think this might be an option for us. I still think this might be something that we can exploit. And of course, nobody knows the PSG team like PSG fans, and you can see online that is something that they are worried about. It is always going to be a strength of ours. So there is a chance there. Let's go on and let's do some score predictions. It's a first leg at the Emirates. Like I said, the atmosphere is going to be buzzing. 2 tifos being put on by the club. It was widely reported that the Ashburton Army were trying to get one done. That got rejected, and then a day later, it was kind of put out by the club. You know, we're going to do 2 humongous ones. I believe one is going to be hung from the North Bank, which I don't think I've certainly never seen that before. It might have happened against the Real Madrid tie, but the TV coverage of the build-up was a bit terrible, to be honest. So hopefully we see a little bit more of that this week and on tomorrow night. Do I want to put this out into the world? I'm going to do it. I do think we will win the first leg. I don't think we'll get through scot-free. I don't think it will be as easy as the Real Madrid game. I think it will be a 2-1 victory for Arsenal in the first leg, and I really have no idea about that second leg yet. I want to watch tomorrow's night game before I predict the whole tie, but I think Bukayo Saka will raise his level. I think Declan Rice will raise his level again. We saw against Crystal Palace, and a lot of people kind of reported that. I was quite annoyed by the Crystal Palace result, and I thought we dropped our level too low. But a lot of people since have come out with sympathy for the players around. Actually, would you be focused on this if you had a Champions League semi-final coming up? Would you be going to 50-50 challenges full-blooded? You might not, and I get that. So I hope that we can raise our level since that and after that game, and come back with tons more energy and play much more like we did in that first and second leg against Real Madrid. That is the Arsenal that I know and the Arsenal that I love, and I really do think we've got a chance of getting a good result. So I think Bukayo Saka will probably lead the way. I think we will get a goal from a set piece. Maybe Mikel Merino rising highest there. So let's go Bukayo Saka and Mikel Merino goal scorers. I think Dembele will cause us issues. I think he will score a goal for PSG. So 2-1 victory is where I'm going to go. Final thing I just want to say is what a historic night this is for Arsenal Football Club tomorrow night. Not just the women obviously getting to the Champions League final. That's a really, really important thing and something we've not done since it was called the UEFA Women's Champions League. I think it was 2007 we were last in the final of that equivalent competition on the women's side. So that's historic in its own right. From the men's side, this is only the third Champions League semi-final we have ever got to. We are the team that has played the most games in the Champions League without ever winning it. We are a picture of consistency, really. If you kind of ignore that horrible period after Arsene Wenger, we're a picture of consistency with the Champions League. You know, since it was created and changed for the European Cup, we've been there or thereabouts and have played so many seasons in this tournament. To have only reached 3 semi-finals is incredible. Obviously, 2006, we played Villarreal and we got through that tie. Thank God for Jens Lehmann and an incredible performance away from home. He obviously saved that penalty from Juan Roman Riquelme in the 88th minute. So that's that was a real memory for me. I think that season was incredible, the way we went through that Champions League, and it would have been awful to fall out of the competition against Villarreal, especially considering we got through Juventus and Real Madrid. That was Real Madrid with Ronaldo, with Beckham, with Zidane. It was Juve with Vieira. Vieira had gone there at that time. Del Piero, Buffon. Incredible team. So we got through against Villarreal, and of course we had the horrible 2009 Champions League semi-final against Manchester United. I won't relive that one. This is our third ever. So no matter what, no matter what happens on Tuesday night and over the whole tie, this is a historic achievement that Mikel Arteta and his players have done. It is a really, really significant step, and I think even if we go out in the semi-final and our season kind of whimpers out into a bit of a nothingness, we come second, we've got to the Champions League semi-final, I think given a bit of time and a bit of distance from it, we'll look back at that Real Madrid tie, we'll look back at getting to a Champions League semi-final, and we'll be able to say, actually, you know what, this season, it's not gone our way, but there's been a couple of moments where maybe our mentality's shifted. The 5-1 against City, I think, will be massive. Beating Real Madrid 5-1 over 2 legs, I think, will be massive. Beating Real Madrid in the Bernabeu will be massive. Knowing that we were a Champions League semi-finalist will be massive for this group of players from a mentality point of view, from a confidence point of view. So whatever happens, I think it is huge for the club, and you cannot play down the significance of being in the Champions League semi-final. Okay, guys, I am going to leave it there. I'm going to get this out for you so you can listen to it early morning with work or something like that. Like I said at the start, I hope wherever you are well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps people find the podcast and hear more about Arsenal Unfiltered that way. So please do consider leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's hope for a massive performance from the boys tomorrow night. I'm already nervous. Like I say, think it's going to be a 2-1 win. Saka and Merino to score. Let's cross our fingers. Hope I'm right. And if you are lucky enough to have a ticket, make all the noise in the world, please. On behalf of all of us who will be making all the noise in the world in our living room, please make sure that you are making that noise in the stadium and making PSG feel very uncomfortable. All that's left to say, guys, is thank you very much for following. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.